Hashavua Shir. I know Jeff said he's going to be watching on the live stream.
Anna, she said she thinks that Graham will pick the time.
Okay. Well, that's the beauty of being able to share Torah online also. You have a bigger crowd. Okay. Let us begin. Just one moment. Okay. Good morning, everybody. We are going to look at the first part of Parshat Yitro. The Torah tells us in source number 1, this is chapter 18, verse 1, Parak Yud Ches Pasuk Aleph. Vayishma Yitro Chohe Midyan Chosei Moshe Es Kol Asher Asa Elokim LeMoshe UYisro Elamo Ki Mitzrayim. Now Moses' father-in-law Jethro, we call him Yitro, the chieftain of Midyan. He was the head of Midyan. Different midrashim attribute Yitro to different roles. Heard all that God has done for Moses and for Israel and his people, that the Lord has taken Israel out of Egypt. Okay, the Torah tells us that Yitro heard about all the wonderful things that recently happened to the Jewish people. He's rather inspired, and what does he choose to do? He comes to visit, but he doesn't come by himself. We know that when Yitro comes to Moshe and the Jewish people, he brings Moshe's wife, Tzipporah, and Moshe has 2 children with him. The Torah tells us in source number 2, Vayikach Yitro Chosei Moshe Es Tzipporah Eshes Moshe Achar Shilucheha. So Moses' father-in-law Jethro took Tzipporah, Moses' wife, after she had been sent away. What exactly does it mean that she had been sent away? Again, different midrashim and biblical commentaries have different takes on the issue. Probably the simplest one is echoed by Rashi, that when Moshe was going down to Egypt to ultimately orchestrate the redemption, he meets Aaron, and Aaron says, Moses, you're bringing your wife and children with you into the slavery? It's bad enough that we have a whole nation that's already stuck in this slavery. We need to add to the numbers. So Moshe sends his wife and his children back up to Midyan, and he now is being reunited with them. So that's probably the simplest meaning of the phrase Achar Shilucheha, after he sent her away, meaning when he originally went down to Egypt, he sent her back up, and now they are being reunited. Torah also tells us at this point the names of Moshe's children and the reason why he had selected Ve'es Shnei Vanea Asher Shem Echad Gershom Ki Amar Ger Hayisi Be'eretz Nachriya, and her 2 sons, one of whom was named Gershom because he, Moshe, said, I was a stranger in a foreign land. V'Shem Ha'echad Eliezer Ki Lokei Avi Be'ezri V'Atzilini Micher Paro. And one was named Eliezer because Moses said, the God of my father came to my aid and rescued me from Paro's sword. So now we have a lot of biological information about Moshe's family. We have the family tree here. We've got Moshe, his wife Tzipporah, his 2 children, Gershom and Eliezer, and the reason why their names were given. I'd like to focus on this portion for a little while. Yes, Alan.
Does this mean that Eliezer was born after
Eliezer, so the commentaries tell us that Eliezer was born right around the time when Moshe was sent to Mitzrayim to begin the redemption process.
But it says here that he rescued him.
We're going to come back to that. Very good. Let's first focus on the language that the Torah uses. It's pretty subtle, but the Netziv picks up on it. In source number 2, the Netziv is commenting on the interesting possessive language that the Torah uses. Let's look back for a moment to Pasuk Gimel. V'es Shnei Vaneha, and her 2 children. Her 2 children. Now, what that means, they're her children and not his children. That's not the case. The father. Yet the Torah clearly connects Gershom and Eliezer to who? The mama. That Shnei Vaneh. Her 2 children she brings with him. So the Netziv wants to know, why doesn't the Torah say that Shnei Vanav, his 2 children, or their children? Why does the Torah speak in the female possessive, her children? He lived with her, very good. Let's also remember who's the one that's bringing the children right now. It's Yitro. So he's the maternal grandfather. So he feels like it's her children. So that's true. The Netziv says something very astute in source number 2. Perish Hamikra Baneha. The Torah tells us that they are her children, v'lo kisiv banav. It does not say that they are his children. Lalamed shebaneha hem hamekashrim osa lemoshe gam achar shiluchaha. What was essentially connecting Moshe to his wife after he sent her back? It was the connection to the children. The asher hi gadala osam. She's the one that raised them. So I think there's a lot you could do with this Netziv. It could just be practically, like you said, Alan, that she's the one that's been raising them, that has been caring for all of their needs since Moshe's been absent to dealing with the Jewish people. I think though the Netziv is saying something even deeper. Let's look back one more time. That the children that are connecting her to Moshe. Beverly, what do you think that's telling us?
Well, even when parents aren't getting along, the children connect them.
Exactly.
Even when they divorce them.
Good. Exactly. I think the Netziv is telling us that this marriage was already strained. Not exactly sure why, but this marriage was already strained. And when Yitro brings the family back, he's very aware that Moshe's readiness to accept his family is really built on the kid connection, not necessarily the relationship between Moshe and Tzipporah. How do I know that the relationship was strained? Well, we know later on in the Torah tells us that the Moshe divorces on some level Tzipporah. That's why Miriam ultimately speaks Lashon Hara about Moshe, and she says, well, why did Moshe divorce his wife? We're able to stay with our spouses, and God talks to us too. I think that's the passage at the end of Parshat Bahalospa. So for one reason or another, we know that the marriage was strained. It's not unreasonable to expect that when a leader such as Moshe's stature is so burdened with caring for the people, that sometimes that comes at great personal sacrifice. So all I'm trying to tell you is that I think that it is alluding to that idea right over here, that Yisro understood already that there is some strain on the marriage, and Be'etchnei Baneha, he's bringing the children in order to connect Moshe back with Tzipporah. Yes?
But it raises the question about the early days where I don't know, so what are you bringing your children to slavery? Maybe Moshe wanted to send people out, so beginning of break up of their marriage.
Right.
It wasn't Aaron.
So it could be. You know, I'm always hesitant to assume that there have been rocky relationships in the Torah, unless the Torah tells us otherwise. So it could be that Moshe was happy to send back Tzipporah when he was going down to Mitzrayim, and he didn't really need Aaron's urging anyways. But the Torah doesn't really tell us one way or the other. All we know is that being reunited, achar shilucha. So there was a point in their marriage when there was a separation. Now they're reunited, and the Netziv is highlighting, yeah, but that reunification is really built upon the fact that she's the mother of his children, and that Beverly, as you reflected, it's not uncommon that in strained marriages, the children are the ones that keep the families together. Rav Hirsch has another interesting idea. He also is looking more broadly, not necessarily at the specifics of the names, but he is telling us what are we able to glean from the general themes of the names of Moshe's children. Let me show you what I mean. Source number 3. Rav Hirsch writes as follows. Hakasav chozer umazkir et shemo shel Gershom umosiv et shem haben hasheni Eliezer. The Torah goes back and tells us the names of Gershom, the names of Eliezer. Nira shedavar zeh balu lamdenu. The Torah is coming to teach us ki merosh, from the very outset, lo heli Moshe me'enei chosno es iburo ves yichuso el ha'am hameshuba mitzrayim. Moshe was a very transparent individual. And from the very beginning, from the names that he chose for his children, he let his father-in-law know that he feels connected back to his brethren in Egypt, and that ultimately, in one capacity or another, he's going to be serving the Jewish people. That's really what Rav Hirsch is telling us. That the names of Moshe's children are listed, but also the significance of their names, which ties back to Mitzrayim, ties back to his people. We'll talk a little bit more about this in the coming commentaries. But Rav Hirsch's idea, sort of flying at 36,000 feet, he's saying just look at the general names. Moshe is clearly communicating with his father-in-law, being transparent, and saying, I am connected back to the story of the Jewish people, which is playing out in Egypt. So it shouldn't come as a surprise that ultimately Moshe goes back to Mitzrayim, reunites with his people. He has the zechus of also being the one to bring about the Geula as directed by the Almighty. I thought that was an interesting idea, and that's why I first conclude in source number 3, line number 3, Shmos Havanim Nigalim es Iburo ve'es Yachaso. The names of the children reflect that connection between Moshe and the Jewish people. Therefore, Yitro, no surprises. Yitro is not surprised. He's now traveling to the desert to be reunited with his son-in-law and the Jewish people. Yitro had an inkling that that was going to happen all along. Good. The Malbim also, in source number 4, is giving us information why the Torah shares with us the meaning of Moshe's children's names. It didn't have to do that in this context. It could have just back Tzipora, Gershom, and Eliezer. That's it. Why does the Torah need to insert the names, and not the names, but the reason for the names? So the Malbim takes it in a little bit of a different direction. While Rav Hirsch focuses our attention on the fact that Moshe was transparent, Moshe wanted his father-in-law to know that he felt connected, and don't be surprised if I choose to go back to Mitzrayim. The Malbim says that the reasoning for the names reflects Moshe's commitment to his children. In what sense? So the Malbim suggests that when a person names his children after occurrences and incidences in a person's life, that reflects the connection that a father feels to his child. An interesting perspective. Let me share with you what the Malbim writes in source number 4. That Shnei Baneh Asher Shem Hachad Gershom Rotze Lomar V'zeh Ha'os She'ohev Es Banav. This is the proof that Moshe loved his children. Kihem Siyano B'Shmosam Es Kol Korosav. Because embedded in their names is a reference to what happened in Moshe's life. Sheshem Gershom Kara Mipnei Ki Amar Ger Hayisi. The name Gershom reflects the fact that Moshe was a foreigner. Ki bilidato haya mischabe mipnei Paro. When Gershom was born, Moshe was still hiding from Paro. The truth is, even if he had been in Mitzrayim, he would still been a foreigner, right? You get the sense that Moshe calls himself a foreigner because he's a Midian. But even if he would be Mitzrayim, he'd be a foreigner. That's also foreign land. But now, if he's a Midian, he's like a foreigner in a foreign land. It's like a double whammy. That's better than being a foreigner in a land in which you were born. Think about our lives in America. We're foreigners, but comfortable foreign land because we were born here. If we would travel to a different country, so we have Tarti L'Reyusa, two things going against us. We're exiled from Israel, and we're also not even in the land that we can call our birthplace. So that's the name Gershom according to the Malbim. What I just thought was very interesting is the way the Malbim understands that when a parent calls a child after something that happened in the parent's life, it's reflective of the deep connection that a parent has with the child. Interesting. We don't name children so much that way, but that's the way that the Malbim understands Moshe's naming scheme for his children. And by the way, we see that somewhere else in Sefer Bereshis. There's someone who names their child explicitly in the Torah based on incidents in his life. So Yosef, think about the name Menashe and Ephraim. It both reflects things that happened to Yosef in his life. God has allowed me to forget my father's home. God has allowed me to multiply in a land that is not my own. So that seems to be a common occurrence biblically, that people name their children based on what happened to them. Very nice. Now I'd like to zero in a little bit more on the names, in particular Gershom. So as I said before, Rav Hirsch speaks generally. Oh yes, the names are connected back to Egypt. That's Moshe being transparent. But now let's zero in on the name Gershom. And I think there's a beautiful Meshech Chachma that I came across while I was preparing this lecture. The Meshech Chachma in source number 4 says something so beautiful. Ger Hayisi Be'eretz Nachriya. Remember, Moshe names his son Gershom, reflecting the fact that he is a foreigner in a foreign land. So what exactly does that mean? Write the Meshech Chachma as follows, source 5. Na'alos Moshe echaya kashur el ahavas amo. The Torah is telling us the praiseworthiness of Moshe, that he felt so connected to his people, right? The word kesher, what's kesher? Kesher is close, it's a connection, it's a knot. You're not, when you're all knotted up, you're close. So says the Meshech Chacham, Moshe felt very, very strong connections to his people. Asher im ki lo hikir osam ki niskadel bebeis Paro. It's true, he didn't really know them because he grew up in Paro's home. V'haya chasan chosein Yitro kohen Midyan. He was also the son-in-law of a very important person in Midyan. So if you would stop there, just look at those two facts, you would imagine that most people would feel very disconnected from their brethren who are enslaved. Moshe grew up literally in the palace. He grew up in the lap of luxury. He had, I'm sure, many people that were feeding him grapes as he was leaning back in his armchair, right, flying first class. Then he gets to Midyan and he marries into a very prestigious family. Again, the Midrashim say that Yitro actually was someone that was excommunicated, was banished from society, and he was not held in high regard because he rejected polytheism and things along those lines, which is why his daughters had to be the one going to the well. Such an important man who would send his daughters to the well. It must be that Yitro was not so rich and held in high regard. He was dismissed. Okay, well, we could go back and forth in terms of interpretations, but we do know that Torah gives us the title Kohen Midyan. So Moshe is growing up in the house of Paro, and then he marries into the chieftain of Midyan. Let's assume that remained in part of Yisro's portfolio. So he was very rich. He was very honored. So Moshe was somebody that really lived a life of luxury, of privilege. And you can imagine that somebody growing up with so much privilege would feel very disconnected from his brethren. I think that's very reasonable. Like Yosef, that's an interesting question. Did Yosef feel really disconnected from his brethren? I'm not sure. That's an interesting question. But what I do know is that all of the cards were stacked against Moshe, in a sense that it was very likely that he would not have a feeling of connection with Am Yisrael. And that's why the Meshech Chachma writes, the Imo Meshuka'im, Omer, his nation were subjugated, they were swallowed up by bricks and mortar. They were so busy, they were the Nebuch. You see, the chasm between Moshe and the people was extremely large. The Cholzos, nonetheless, I have the words bolded over here. The Cholzos ve'ene atzmo leger be'aretz nachriya. Nonetheless, Moshe considered himself to be a foreigner in a strange land. He names his son Gershom because even though he's living in the lap of luxury, he's got so much privilege right now in his life, he feels like he is in slavery. That's how strongly he identifies with his brothers. That's what the Torah is telling us. Ki ger hayisi be'eretz nachriya. Ger? You're living in the chief of Midyan's home. You're a ger? The answer is yeah. Moshe so strongly identified with his people that even though he was living in such opulence, he still felt like a foreigner.
Well, do we know if Paro
From the text itself, we know very little. From the text itself, we know that Moshe was raised in Paro's home. So There are midrashim that tell us otherwise, that Paro, gave Moshe that choice between the gold and the coal, and the malach came and switched his hand. But those are midrashim. From the simple reading of the text, there's no reason to assume that Moshe did not grow up with anything lacking. He grew up in the palace. So that's the Meshachach, the beautiful Meshachach. Mitzrayim was his land. So it's interesting. The Malbim acknowledge that Mitzrayim was not really the land of the Jews. The Meshech Chachma doesn't say. The Meshech Chachma says that Moshe, when he said, I am a foreigner in the land, he was speaking about what? He was speaking about his experiences, that I am away from Mitzrayim. He felt like Mitzrayim was his land, which, by the way, makes sense. He had never been to Israel, enslaved. This was the land that he knew. And he identified so strongly with the plight of his brethren that he felt like he was exiled.
Well, it was in his DNA.
Yeah, that's right. That's true. Vitzaro al zeh gadol, and the pain that he had over this matter was so great. Ad kilo hirgish b'hatzalaso. Not feel that he personally was saved. V'lo kara oso al shem she'ezro v'tzilo mecher paro. And he doesn't even cause his son a name that reflects his own personal salvation. If you take the approach, the name Eliezer is because God saved Moshe. Something that Rashi says. You don't think that Moshe would have this tremendous amount of gratitude to Hashem that would indicate that he would name his that salvation? And the answer that you get is no. Moshe's first identity was tied up with the Jewish people. So that's why the first son is named Gershom. I'm connected back to my people. I'm in exile. And the second name refers to the personal salvation that Moshe had at the hand of Paro. There are other ways of interpreting the name Eliezer. We're going to come back to that in just a moment. But I thought that this was just really a striking insight of the Meshech Chachma. We read through this text so quickly. We know, yeah, Moshe's son was Gershom. But to think about the statement that he was making is quite profound. Okay, so now we have another issue that we have to tackle. You read the psukim again so quickly, just don't register, but there's something that's off. Let's look back. At Shnei Vaneha, I'm just looking back to Pasuk Gimel for a moment. At Shnei Vaneha, Yitro brought Tzipor to this shame. What should have been the next word? Remember, Achad Gershom. The first one is called Gershom. So what should it be? The opening clause. The Shem Hasheni Eliezer. The second one, we've got first and we've got second. So first, 1 second. The next pasuk should have read that Shem, the Shem Hasheni Eliezer. It doesn't say that. It says the Shem Ha'echad, the name of the other one.
But we don't know from his children who was.
I think we do. Shem Ha'echad Gershom. The older one is known as Gershom. Yeah. No. It needs the oldest. Yeah. Either way, even if he's not the oldest, which he is, but even if he's not the oldest, you count first, second. Even if you're not going in age order, you still count. You don't count 1, 1, 1, 1, 1. The Torah is very strange. V'shem, it should be V'shem Hasheni Eliezer, but instead it says V'shem Ha'echad Eliezer, the name of the other, and one was named Eliezer. Strange. Fair? Fair question? Beverly, you're not so taken by the question?
One and the other.
Then it should be.
It's not like a whole group of them. It's two.
I think you're right. I think Beverly's right.
Or in English, sometimes you say like two sons.
Right.
One is John and one is Joseph.
Okay.
You don't necessarily have to say.
Okay, I understand what you're saying. The commentaries, I think, are bothered because usually the Torah counts. It'll say 1 and then 2 and so on and so forth. I think the pasuk should have read V'shem Hasheni Eliezer. If you look back to the psukim by Menashe and Ephraim, I'm pretty sure it says the first one V'shem Hasheni and the name of the second one. Yet here it just says Echad and Echad. So the Rabbeinu Bachya in source number 6 writes as follows: V'shem Ha'echad Eliezer Haya ro'ui lomar b'shem hasheni. The Torah should have said the name of the second one. That's the problem. So, just anyone have a suggestion? What is the Torah coming to highlight when it says echad?
I don't want to make one son one foot.
Very good. So clearly, very good, Beverly. Clearly, the Torah is trying to highlight the individual status of the second son. It's not trying to say that it's that the second son was the addition, and the next addition of the family was Eliezer. There's something individual. There's something unique about Eliezer that the Torah is trying to highlight. Absolutely the case. Now, what is this individual aspect that they're trying to highlight? That's subject to a great deal of a machlokas, different interpretations. So let me show you what Rabbi Nebachi writes. He says in source number 6, line number 1, Ya'adas hapshat, the simple understanding, zeh miyuchad le'imo, v'zeh miyuchad. Each parent had a favorite child. I don't know if you'd use the word favorite necessarily, like they loved them more, but there was something that resonated with each child, with each parent. Gershom, Shahaya HaBechor, Hayamiyuchad le'imo. Gershom was the oldest, so that was like the apple in his mind. He was the apple in his mother's eye. V'od, shehitzidlaso min hamisa, kinyan she'namar v'tikach tziporat tzor. So going back to a very cryptic narrative that's recorded in Parshat Shemos, when Moshe is going down to Mitzrayim, so we know like a serpent comes and swallows up Moshe until Tzipporah gives the bris milah to the oldest child, Gershom. Without getting into more details, Tzipporah saved the life of Moshe and her oldest son. So there was a special infatuation that Tzipporah had with Gershom. Does it mean that she loved Gershom more than Eliezer? I don't think that that's the case. As parents, I think we all love our children equally, but differently. So there was a special connection that Tzipporah had with Gershom. Eliezer hayamiyucha leMoshe shekaru kain al shem hatzalasa. When Moshe had a special relationship with Eliezer, he was called after that incident where Moshe's life was saved. So each one had a special relationship with each child. So that's why the language of the Torah is shem ha'echad ve'et shem ha'echad. Each one was singular in that special relationship. All right, let's look at the Malbim. I think this the Malbim's interpretation resonates with me a little bit more. The Malbim writes in source number 7, B'shem ha'echad Eliezer, hu nolad be'es shetzivo Hashem la'leches al paro. Eliezer was born at the time, I'm speaking to your point, Eliezer was born at the time when Moshe received the commandment to go to Paro. Shaz noda she'elohei aviv be'ezro. That's when Moshe understood that the God of his father is going to be saving the Jewish people. And no longer did Moshe, or quite frankly anybody, need to be afraid of the sword of Paro. And that is where the name Eliezer comes from. So you asked me before, right? When was Eliezer born? So based on the naming of Eliezer, you get the sense that Eliezer was born at the time when God was sending Moshe down to save the Jewish people. And according to the Malbim, the name does focus on Moshe's personal salvation, but rather the general salvation that the Jewish people were now able to enjoy. They didn't have Paro's sword. Below Amar v'shem hasheni, and the Torah doesn't use the name use the word sheni. Below Amar ki beledes Eliezer, because when Eliezer was born, ready for this, samach lo mazel chadash. What does that mean? What's samach? What does the word samach mean? Samach is to grow. Mazel chadash? No, what does that mean? Mazel chadash. At the time when Eliezer was born, Moshe has a new mazel. What does that mean? He said Moshe got a new job. He got a really big promotion. Up to now, he was a shepherd. Okay, so it's good to be a shepherd. But then he got the ultimate promotion. God tells him, you're going to go save the Jewish people. You're going to be a leader. So that was a moment of rebirth for Moshe. So from that perspective, this is his first son. This is not his second son. That's what the Malbim writes. It's as if Moshe had a renewal. He became a new person. Larei lefan of melech v'sarim. And now he had the courage, he had the fortitude to go down and speak to the king and the officers of Paro. Asher kol echa mehabanim lefi horaso hu nifrad me'asheni. And to the extent that each child was considered completely independent from one another. Each one was separate. So Gershom, and it's very nice if you think about it this way. Gershom was born when the Jewish people were still enslaved. And Moshe saw himself as a sort of a satellite of that slavery. Certainly when you think about the Meshech Chachma, we would describe Moshe fully identified with the slavery. So that first name has a negative connotation. And then, but Moshe, just 1 second, I didn't mean to interrupt you. And then Hashem, new mission, Hashem tells Moshe he's going to save the people. Wow. That already introduces a new section, a new time in Moshe's life. And the child that's born in that section is unique to Moshe, unique to a new chapter in his life, and that's why the Torah does not identify Eliezer as the Sheni, but identifies Eliezer as Echad, as the other one. New chapter. Very, very nice. Again, I'm going to repeat myself. We do ourselves a disservice by reading through the verses ever so quickly. I've read these psukim so many times, I've never realized the depth of the psukim. It just takes stopping and opening up a chumash and coming to a parsha shir to realize the tremendous depth that is included. Okay, beautiful. Now what I'd like to do is look at a verse about 7 or so psukim later. We started with pasuk aleph, and now we're going to look at pasuk ches. And we have to understand the repetition or the seeming repetition that the Torah speaks of. So I'm going to draw your attention back to the first page. Source number 1, pasuk aleph. I'm going to read it one more time. Vayishma Yitro choe minyan chose Moshe. So Yitro hears. What does he hear? Is kol asher asa Elokim leMoshe uVyisro el amo. He hears that all of the things that God did for Moses and the Jewish people. Ki yotzi Hashem es yom mitzrayim, out of Egypt. Wow. Yitro rather hears this unbelievable news, and he leaves Midian. He goes to the Jewish people in the desert. That by itself is wonderful. The problem is, if you look at pasuk ches, we seem to have the same storyline repeated. The Torah tells us, "Vayisaper Moshe lechosno." Moshe shares with his father-in-law, "Is kol asher asa, is kol Hashem lefaro u'Mitzrayim alodos Yisrael." He hears about all the things that God did to Paro and the Egyptians regarding the Jewish people. Is kol hatzlaah asher mitzasam b'derech v'yitzim Hashem. All the occurrences that happened on the way, and God saved them. So isn't that the same thing? Yisro comes and he hears, but why does he come? Because he hears of all the wonderful things that are happening to the Jewish people. He comes, Moshe gives him a big bear hug, and he tells him all the wonderful things that are happening to Yisro. Already knows that. So it was a big deal when the sea split. Everyone was talking about it. It was the front page of the Midian Times. I mean, of course, there was the Israeli bias, but there was the front news. The whole world heard about it. In the Az Yashir, Moshe, the Torah, that idea that everyone heard about what happened, and all of the nations of the world were trembling. Word gets around. So, what new information is Moshe sharing with his papi, with his father-in-law?
First I mentioned Moshe.
Very good. So there are a number of differences that the commentaries pick up on. So let's try ourselves, before delving into the commentaries, to see some of those differences. So who would like to make an observation regarding the difference between what Yitro hears from the general news versus what he hears directly from Moshe? Just compare the psukim. What's the difference? Okay, very good. So in pasuk aleph, Yitro hears everything that God did for Moses and Israel, focusing on Moses. And in pasuk ches, Moshe tells Yitro about all the things that happened to Paro and to the Egyptians because of Israel. But Moshe doesn't talk about himself. The word Moshe doesn't appear. Very good. What else? Any other differences that you can detect? So look at the name of God that's used. In Pasuk Aleph, the name of God that Yitro hears about is Kol Asher Asa Elokim. And when Moshe talks to his father-in-law, Eis Kol Asher Asa Hashem, that which God did. Those are two distinct differences. So let's see. If you look in source number 9, Rashi is absolutely addressing this issue, but he doesn't really delve into the differences to a great degree. Look at what Rashi writes in source number 9. Vaysaper Moshe lechosno. Moshe shares with his father-in-law, Limshoch es libo, the pay is a typo, Limshoch es libo likarva laTorah. Moshe speaks to his father-in-law in order to draw his father-in-law in order for the father-in-law to be inspired and want to join the Jewish people, likarva laTorah, to inspire him to join Am Yisrael on their historic journey to receive the Torah into the land of Israel. And the Sifsei Chachamim, one of the super commentaries on Rashi, writes as follows, addressing our point. The Im Lo Kain, if Moshe's story, Lama Siper La, why does Moshe have to tell his father-in-law what happened? Hakfar Shama Hakol. Pasuk Aleph. So the Sifsei Chachamim is telling us, Moshe, well, let me rephrase that. The Sifsei Chacham is telling us what's motivating Rashi to make his commentary. Rashi's commentary that tells us that Moshe shared with Yitro all of the things that happened to draw him into the Torah is essentially acknowledging the fact that there was no new information shared. Nothing new. It's just Moshe felt that he's going to go over the details now in order to draw the people, to draw Yitro in. Make it more significant, maybe more of an emotional tone to the story. But informationally, was anything new included? No. According to Rashi, Rashi's saying he's drawing him in to get him interested in Torah. And that's what the Sifsei Chacham is saying. Is otherwise, what's the point of his sharing? Moshe and Yisro already knows. Clearly, according to Rashi and the Sifsei Chachamim, no new information is being shared, nothing at least noteworthy. And the whole point is just to make this emotional plea to Yisro to join the Jewish people and to accept the Torah.
He's not.
He's a Choin Minyan. He's a.
But he came to, he was on his way.
No. Good enough. Father-in-laws don't always come to stay. They come for a few days and then they go back, right? Okay. All right. Well, someone said a cute joke. It's certainly not my in-laws. They're so wonderful. But someone said, what do in-laws and fish have in common? After 3 days, they begin to reek. Okay. So the Netziv says in source number 3 as follows, a very nice idea. It's Kol Asher Asa Hashem Leparu L'Mitzrayim Alodos Yisrael. Af al gav shekvar shama es asher asa Elokim LaMoshe u'Yisrael amo. Even though the Torah has already told us that Yisro hears everything that has happened to the Jewish people, nonetheless, there was something new that Moshe added to the conversation. Mashalo yada. There was new information shared that Yisro up to now did not know. Hainu, Asher Asa Hashem, that which God, below Elokim, not Elokim, Shemashma'o Koach Hadin, V'ha'onesh al ha'negishas. You see, Yisro heard about the name Elokim. Elokim implies din. Din is judgment. God was strict. God was strict because there were committed. That we could bring them to the Hague for all of their crimes against humanity. They had subjugated and enslaved the Jewish people for hundreds of years. So Yisro hears about all of the strict justice that God metes out against the Egyptians. And Moshe tells Yisro there was much more happening than simply, serving the Egyptians their just deserts. God, Hashem, not Elohim, but Hashem was involved here too. There was a midas harachamim, there was compassion, there was mercy that was all showered upon the Jewish people. If you look at the Netziv in the next paragraph, he explains a little bit further. Ela odzos shebemakos hayatachli ladas koach Hashem. Part of the plan, the purpose of the Makos, was not simply to punish the Egyptians, but it was also for the world, and particularly the Jewish people, to understand the koach of Hashem, to understand the power of God. Moshe Amar Hashem bekama makomos leman teida. Moshe is told many times by God, I'm going to inflict the Egyptians so that they should know about my power. The commotion is Barasham, as explained there. V'hodia lo od shehaya leparo u'lemitzrayim. This is an unbelievable insight. So let me just what the Netziv just said. Netziv says the first difference is that Yitro hears about God as a strict being that's punishing all those who are guilty. Moshe introduces the concept of Hashem, a compassionate, merciful God that wanted people to know about his presence and wanted to connect to the Jewish people. That's the first difference that you can see in terms of the name of God that was used. But then the Netziv says, Moshe also wanted Yisro to know about all the things that God did to Paro and Mitzrayim. Isn't that the same thing? Paro and Mitzrayim? Why does it just say Paro? Just say Mitzrayim. Why do you have to have both words? So listen to this unbelievable insight. V'hodia lo od shehaya leparo u'lemitzrayim shelo nishtavu ha'onshim atzman leparo u'lemitzrayim. That the punishments themselves were not the same to Pharaoh and to the Egyptians. Ela leparo hayu gidolim kidei laharos hatachlis mizeh hamaka. Paro suffered even more. Mashlo hayamakom lekavos sheyadu Mitzrayim mizeh. Paro suffered more because God understood that Paro has the ability to understand the hand of God and ultimately to communicate that to his people. The Egyptians, so God didn't expect too much from the Egyptians, so they suffer a little bit less. Umikomakom higia kozeh alodos Yisrael. And Moshe also tells his father-in-law that everything that happened surrounded the Jewish people. Oksiv biglal Yisrael. The Torah doesn't say the words biglal Yisrael. Ela be'emes letachlis yitzias Yisrael lo haya hechrech lekach. Because if it was just to get the Jewish people out, we didn't need 10 plagues. Ela b'sivas Yisrael. This happened because of nisgalgalu yedios halalu. Because of the Jewish people, we were now able to get the message to Egyptians about the power of God, his role in the universe. All of that happened because of the Jewish people. Again, it was not because the Jewish people had to get out. That God could have done very quickly. Rather, it's in the merit of the Jewish people, God was able to increase the knowledge of this world. The Od Hodiyu es Kol Atla. Additionally, Moshe lets him know about all of the incidences that have happened on the journey. Vizelo Shama Adayin. That Yisro didn't know also. So new information has happened. Since Yisro got the last paper, whenever that was printed, more information has become known. And Moshe shared that with his father-in-law too. So essentially, according to the Netziv, I would say there are 3 different points that Moshe added to what Yisro already knew. Number 1, the type of God that we're dealing with. Is it just a strict God, Elokim? No. There was definitely a Midas Hadin, but there was also Midas Haracham. That was the Shem Hashem that Moshe speaks of in Pasuk Ches. Number 2, Moshe imparted this information to his father-in-law that Paro suffered and Mitzrayim suffered. They suffered differently. What the Netziv doesn't say, but I think it's just rational and intuitive. He was more guilty than the rest of the people. He was a leader, so he suffered more. The way the Netziv spins it is that Paro, or let me say this, that Hashem had higher hopes than Paro. That Paro could understand that the suffering was because of the hand of the Almighty. That level of understanding, a regular Egyptian might not have been able to really understand. So that's why Paro is hit harder, because Hashem expects more of Paro's recognition of the hand of the Almighty, and all of the new things that have happened since Yisro got his paper. So there was more to tell. So clearly, according to the Netziv, what we read about in Pasuk Aleph and what we read about in Pasuk Ches is markedly different from one another.
You can always have more information.
Absolutely.
Someone who's been there,
Absolutely.
then by the time you
Yes.
hear second or third hand.
Absolutely.
it's changed.
Yes, very good.
I still don't understand why you say that Paro suffered more than, what way did Paro suffer more than Egypt?
You're saying if physically the 10 plagues came, so lice is lice and pestilence is pestilence
Paro
and
survived.
darkness is darkness.
Many Egyptians did not.
Right. It's an interesting question. We definitely see a lot of the language that the Torah uses in the Makos. It focuses on Paro and his home and his servants, and then everybody else. Like there was an emphasis there. A, it could have started with Paro, so it might have lasted a little bit longer. And B, the bigger they are, the harder they fall. So having to suffer through the plagues and having to lose the Jewish people was a harder hit to Paro than it was to everybody else. Emotionally, it impacted him a lot more. He was meant to be defeated by somebody else, by God. That hurt Paro even more.
Paro suffered politically.
Right. So maybe.
Right.
It's a fair point. Your point is that if the plagues were generally physical attacks on the Egyptians, so what Paro's darkness was worse than darkness. It's a fair point. I'm not 100% sure how to respond to that. It's an interesting observation. Let's finish off this morning's lecture with the Malbim. The Malbim, Moshe shares with his father-in-law. Neged Masha Kasav Lamala, corresponding, or really I should say in contrast, to what the Torah tells us above. She Yitro Shama Is Asher Asa Elokim LaMoshe LiYisrael. She Moshe Hu Ha'ikar. Shal Yado Nasa Kol. You see, Yisro is a very proud father-in-law. So when he hears of the information of what happens to Moses and the Jewish people, so Yisro feels like, wow, everything. Moses. Look at the pasuk. It reads very nice. The pasuk Aleph. Vayishma Yisro Choy Midyon Chosei Moshe is Kol Asher Asa Elokim LiMoshe LiYisrael. Everything happens because of Moses. It's my son-in-law. Oh, what a Yiddish nachas, a Minyan nachas, right? Tremendous nachas that Yisro had. Amar lo Moshe. So Moshe had to very politely correct his father-in-law. Shehakol nasa ala dos Yisrael. Let's be honest, Dad. Nothing happened because of me. This is all about Odos Yisrael. That's the language from Pasuk Ches. Moshe tells his father-in-law, I am just the conduit, I'm just the messenger, but ultimately it's not in my zechus. Lo ba'avuro, it's not because of me. Moshe Kasov, Klum nasati lecha gedula ela b'shvil Yisrael. That's a general idea that we see reflected in Moshe's leadership, that Moshe's greatness is only a function of the Jewish people's greatness. And when the Jewish people fall, Moshe falls. That's why the Torah tells us that as long as the Jewish people were wandering around the desert in those years of the exile, Moshe didn't communicate in the same way with the Almighty. Because if the Jewish people were punished, Moshe is simply an extension of the Jewish people. So it's a nice idea. I think parents oftentimes have nachas in a bloated way. Like they think, oh, my son or my son-in-law, they get all the credit. And oftentimes it's not exactly that, not exactly the case. Okay, let's move on. V'neged mas, the next paragraph in source 12. V'neged mas shekasav es asher asa Elokim LaMoshe, corresponding to what Yisro heard that Elokim did this for Moshe. Moshe sha'atovos nasu al yedei Elokim, the kochos ha-moshlin. God was acting again as a ruler, as a strong ruler. Amar le Moshe, she'akol nasa al yedei havaya, ki ein od milvado. To what the Nitziv says, there are different attributes of God. Yisro thought it was only through the attributes of Elokos, of Din, of Gevura, but Moshe says that there was also compassion. There was also mercy there. It wasn't as you may have heard about. V'neged mashe Yisro lo hisori arak mitzad hatov shenasa liYisrael. You see, Yisro was inspired about the good that happens to the Jewish people. Lo mitzad hamakos shehi kol Mitzrayim shechoshe shehem mipoel hara. Yisro is not particularly taken by the plagues because he thinks that that's like evil. That was punishment. Moshe corrects his father-in-law. Siper lo Moshe asher asa Hashem leparo u'lemitzrayim. Yitro was told what happens to Paro and to Egyptians, that was also good. Shegam zehaya mipoal hatov. That was actually good. Ki zeh asa al odos Yisrael, because it was all about the Jewish people. Kedei lehitiv liYisrael leha'anish et nokshehem u'lehotziam lechiros. There was a positive purpose that came out of the plagues as well. So it seems like Yitro heard the story from one perspective, from one narrative. He focused on the good of the Jews and was not taken by all of the terrible things that happened to the Egyptians. And Moshe tries to spin it a little bit differently and says, you should be aware that even in the hands of God to the Egyptians wasn't evil, it had a purpose. There was a good that came out of that too. So that's why if you look at Parshat, Yisro doesn't mention Mitzrayim, doesn't mention Paro. And when you look at Parshat, Moshe loops them in as well. Ularaya al zeh, and then as further proof that everything is about the good of the Jewish people, Siper lo es kol hatzla'a asher matzasam adem. Yisro is also told about all of the wonderful things that God has done for the people on their way in the desert, the man, the well, all of those pieces. Moshe adds to the conversation because it's proof of the pudding that everything is done for the good of the Jewish people. So that which we sort of marginalize as simply evil and punishment for the Egyptians, don't marginalize it as such. You have to integrate it in part of the larger story. It was all for the sake of the Jewish people. It was all a function of God's compassion over Am Yisrael. So the Netziv and the Malbim are both barking up the same tree. They're both saying that Moshe's information and Yisro's are not exactly the same. The generalities were the same, but Moshe was able to share with his father levels of detail that he did not know and spin the story in a way that Yisro was not otherwise aware. So I hope that you're leaving today's class with a better understanding of the first couple of psukim of this week's Kriyas HaTorah. This parsha is so rich we could spend the next 6 hours talking about the very first Aliyah, but I guess we have other things to move on to.
But
Yes, Shakawa.
But in the first part,
Yes.
it talks that Yisro knew heard about all that Hashem did for Moshe and for Israel.
Right.
But it wasn't only for Moshe.
That's true. Yeah, that's true. But who comes first? Who comes first? He puts the emphasis on Moshe. So it's like, it happens. Father-in-laws have this inflated, or hopefully a father-in-law has this inflated vision of his son-in-law. I like to think my father-in-law has such a vision. I'm not 100% sure. But, it's not uncommon for parents and in-laws to think, oh, wow, everything is because of this person. Fiasca, stop recording.